You know the Silk Road, right? A legendary trade route spanning continents and centuries, famous for silk, spices, and exotic goods. But have you ever stopped to wonder who actually built it? Not just the emperors who decreed it or the merchants who traveled it, but the people who laid the literal groundwork. Beyond the emperors and merchants, there were countless unsung heroes whose sweat and ingenuity forged this incredible network. Prepare to discover the untold stories of the true architects of global trade. When we picture the Silk Road, we often imagine vast deserts, basline, oases, and long caravans of camels. And that's all true. But what we often miss is that the Silk Road wasn't one single road built from scratch by one empire. It was a complex, evolving network of paths, trails, and sea lanes that grew organically over centuries. It wasn't built in the way we build a modern highway. It was formed. And the people who formed it were far more diverse than you might think. Let's start at the very beginning. The initial push came from the Han dynasty in China around the 2nd century BCE. Emperor Wu of Han was looking for allies against his rivals, the Xiongnu nomads. He sent an envoy named Zhang Qian on a perilous journey west. Zhang Qian didn't exactly succeed in finding allies, but his travels and the information he brought back opened China's eyes to the world beyond its borders. He documented the sophisticated civilizations of Central Asia, their powerful horses, and their desire for Chinese goods, especially silk. This sparked the initial flame. But Zhang Qian didn't build the road. He was a pioneer who mapped the possibilities. The real construction, the physical labor, fell to a different class of people, soldiers, convicts, and local laborers. To protect the burgeoning trade routes from nomadic raids, the Han dynasty extended its Great Wall far to the west, creating what's known as the Hexi Corridor. Imagine being a soldier stationed in a remote watchtower in the middle of the Gobi Desert. Your job wasn't just to watch for enemies. It was to maintain the forts, dig wells, and ensure the pathway was safe for caravans. These soldiers were the first road crews of the Silk Road. They weren't building for trade, they were building for defense. But in doing so, they created the arteries that commerce would soon flow through. But a road is useless without places to stop. This is where the oasis towns come in. Places like Dunhuang, Turpan, and Samarkand weren't just dots on a map. They were vital hubs of life and commerce. Who built these? Local people Sasagians, Talkarians, Uyghurs, and many others. They were masters of desert survival. They engineered incredible irrigation systems called keres or kanats. These are underground channels that carry water from mountains to the arid plains, a technology so brilliant it's still used today. These engineers, whose names are lost to history, turned barren desert into thriving agricultural centers and bustling cities. They didn't just build rest stops. They built the engines that power the entire network. Without their ingenuity, long-distance travel across the unforgiving deserts of Central Asia would have been impossible. And let's talk about the camels and their handlers. The Bactrian camel, with its 2 humps, was the all-terrain vehicle of the ancient world. It could carry hundreds of pounds for weeks with little water. But these animals didn't manage themselves. The cameleers, often nomads themselves, were the expert navigators and logisticians of the Silk Road. They knew the desert like the back of their hand, where to find water, how to predict sandstorms, and the safest paths to take. They were the truck drivers of their day, spending months on end in harsh conditions. Their knowledge, passed down through generations, was the living GPS of the ancient world. They weren't just leading animals. They were weaving the very fabric of the trade network with every step they took. As the network grew, so did the infrastructure. Caravanserais roadside sprang up along the routes. Who built these? Often, they were commissioned by wealthy merchants or local rulers, but they were constructed by local masons, carpenters, and laborers. These weren't just simple shelters. They were fortified compounds where merchants could rest, feed their animals, store their goods securely, and trade with other travelers. Each caravanserai was a microcosm of the Silk Road, itself a melting pot of languages, cultures, and ideas. The stonemasons who shaped the walls and the woodworkers who carved the gates were creating more than just buildings. They were creating the social nodes that allowed culture to be exchanged along with goods. And we can't forget the monks, missionaries, and pilgrims. The Silk Road wasn't just a route for silk and spices. It was a highway for faith and philosophy. Buddhist monks from India and Central Asia traveled east to China, carrying scriptures and religious art. Along the way, they established monasteries and carved incredible grottos, like the Mogao caves in Untold. Who carved these magnificent works of art into the cliffside? Armies of anonymous artisans, sculptors, and painters. They spent their entire lives in remote locations, driven by faith to create breathtaking sanctuaries. These artists and craftsmen transformed the Silk Road from a purely commercial route into a profound spiritual corridor, leaving a legacy that we can still marvel at today. Their work tells the story of how ideas traveled and transformed as they moved from one culture to another. So, when we ask, who built the Silk Road? The answer is beautifully complex. It wasn't one person or one empire. It was a monumental, multicultural, and multi-generational effort. It was the Han soldier standing guard on a lonely tower. It was the Sogdian engineer digging an underground water channel. It was the nomadic camellia navigating by the stars. It was the local mason laying stones for a caravan. It was the Buddhist artist painting a fresco deep inside a desert cave. It was millions of forgotten people whose names we'll never know, but whose collective labor created one of the most significant achievements in human history. The next time you hear about the Silk Road, remember these unsung heroes. They are the true architects of a world connected not just by the desire for profit, but by the enduring human spirit of exploration, creation, and connection. They didn't just build a road. They built the foundations of our modern globalized world. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more hidden histories. Let me know in the comments which group of Silk Road builders you found most surprising. See you in the next video.